The first thing that I was really keen to find out when I first loaded up this early access copy of WRC9 was actually little to do with the game itself, and more to do, funnily enough, with Test Drive Unlimited. And don't worry, I'm not going to linger on this subject for a long time, but it is pertinent to the channel, because I did cover a lot of Test Drive Unlimited 3, or TDU Solar Crown, in other words, news, recently. And of course, it has the same developer, the same producers, Nacon Entertainment. And Nacon, and this is the curious thing, announced that TDU Solar Crown will have the same physics engine as the WRC games, presumably including this one. That interested me a lot, because that could either be a really good thing or a really bad thing. See, if the WRC physics bleed over into Test Drive, that's great, because it will be more realistic, certainly when it comes to stuff like handling the weight of a vehicle. If it bleeds over the other way though, meaning that WRC will feel more like a TDU game, at least in the past of the franchise, that's not so great, because TDU has kind of weird physics, and that comes from somebody who loves the TDU games. I'm happy to say though, it seems to be the former. It is more so that the WRC, more realistic graphics and physics and weight of the car, etc. will probably bleed over to Test Drive, which is the way you'd want it to be. Now, I'm going to talk about the physics first, because I think that along with the graphics, tends to be the two things that people want to know about the most. I don't need to tell you about the graphics, because you can see it on screen. To me, the graphics are perhaps a little bit more grainy than I would have liked. Graininess can be good, sometimes it comes off as what I would call scratchy though. It has a little bit of a dated look to it. I like my grainy graphics to be when it comes to something like a gravel road, rather than the car itself. If the car itself is too grainy and too overly detailed, it can sometimes come off as looking a bit old, and that's the best way I think I can describe it, but you can decide for yourself based on the look of the vehicles. Now, to talk to the physics though, I like some things about it and other things not so much. Now, I'm not going to be comparing this game to Dirt 5, because I simply think it's not a great comparison. Dirt 5, as with 4, 3, 2 and 1, tend to focus in more on the fun side of rally, like Gymkhana and that kind of stuff, whereas Dirt Rally, such as most recently Dirt Rally 2.0, that is a much better comparison to make. Now, previously, of course, on the channel, quite some time ago, I also reviewed V-Rally 4. You could make some comparisons between this game and that one, but I think that it has a lot more in common with Dirt Rally 2.0. But to put it succinctly, I would say that WRC 9 feels like V-Rally 4 and Dirt 2.0 put together. Very much so, in fact. In terms of the physics, it's more like V-Rally. In terms of stuff like menus and layouts and infrastructure and progression though, well, then it has much more in common.
Flat right 30, right 4 into left 5 into right 5, into left 3 medium, tightens, into right 5 into left 4, tightens, into right 4, tightens 3, medium, 50, left 3 medium, tightens, and right 3 medium, don't cut, and left 2 over crest, 40, right 4 opens and tightens short into left 3, 30. Right 2 short into left 3 and right 4 opens, medium, 30. Left 2 and right 3 into left 4. Into right 5, into left 4, into kinks, don't cut, over 70. Caution, right 2 medium, 40. Left 5 tightens, into right 6, 30. Left 3, into right 4 tightens. And left 2 caution, keep middle through gate. And right 5 tightens for left 4, medium. into right 5, into left 3, tightens, medium 30. Hairpin right 30. Left 6, into right 6, keep middle through gate. And left 4 medium tightens and right 3 don't cut. Into left 2, keep right through gate. For right 2, into flat left, opens 50. Flat right medium, narrows 50. Left 5, keep right for left 6 short, narrows. Caution, brake acute hairpin left, widens at junction 500. Into right 6, into flat left, small cut.
Hello there gorgeous gamers and welcome back to another Pure Play TV video review, and this time we've got WRC 9 for PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch and PC, with PS5 and Xbox Series X versions due later this year. I have the uncanny knack for being the one lumped with driving games when it comes to review duties. Not that I mind, but I've played just about all of them over the course of this generation, apart from WRC, World Rally Championship. Somehow, either through fate or misfortune, I've not gotten around to the WRC series, and WRC 9 is my first real taste of what this series is all about. Well, that's not really true. I did play one of the PS Vita games years ago, but I dumped it after half an hour, declaring it crap. Thankfully, that hasn't happened in WRC 9, and I don't think it's in any danger of landing on my infamous pile of crap that I've had to review over the past decade. WRC 9 is the officially licensed rally game for the FIA Rally Championship, meaning that what you get here is the full FAT experience, with the extra FAT being licensed cars, manufacturers and drivers, as well as interpretations of WRC 9 is the officially licensed rally game for the FIA Rally Championship, meaning that what you get here is the full FAT experience, with the extra FAT being licensed cars, manufacturers and drivers, as well as interpretations of real-life rally racetracks. Now, like in other racing games before it, WRC 9 would not normally be my go-to racing games. I love arcade sims like Forza Horizon series or Grid. Rally isn't my strong point, and I've never gone out of my way to play a rally game, apart from when Dirt on the PS4 got the PSVR update. I bought that at full price and didn't regret it, even if my stomach did. But I'm not against trying new things, and my newfound love for truck racing is proof of that. So I gave WRC 9 a fair shot, and I've come out quite surprised, as usual, to find that I don't need the flash of AAA productions or the pointless grind for meaningless trinkets to have a good time. WRC 9 gives you options, and more than I could have guessed. You've got the choice to start down in the Rookie Championship with WRC Junior, or you can head straight to the top and see what those guys and gals make of you. I started from the bottom with the expectation that it would be easier and allow me time to get familiar with the game's car handling and tracks. It did, and by the end of the season I had no trouble throwing my beat up motor over 4 long lefts, wobbly jump 69 and all the other gobbledygook that my co-driver was constantly screaming at me. To be fair, I've never understood what those little phrases really mean. Does anybody? But there is a visual aid that gives you a rough idea what the next part of the course will be, so don't worry about not understanding the lingo. Car handling is a fundamental part of every racing game, and WRC 9 doesn't disappoint on that front. Throwing cars over bumps and drifting them around deadly hairpins isn't easy, but once you've got the feel for the way the game handles each car, it's very satisfying, and it becomes a little too natural to throw caution to the wind every now and again, at the expense of precious seconds on the clock. Speaking of which, if you're not familiar with rally racing, you don't actually compete head to head, but instead you're racing against the times set by the other drivers. You've also got some special events, and they spice things up a touch. My favourites were the extreme weather events, because I'm a sucker for snow, and we haven't had a decent bit of snowfall at home for a few years. I'm easily pleased, and WRC 9 is an easy pleaser. Career mode is where I spent most of my time in WRC 9. It's easy to get lost within its career mode because it's quite deep, and it forces you to take on roles that aren't usually offered to players. You need to keep your team going, and that means keeping a steady stream of cash coming in. Just like the real world, everything costs money. You pay for your teams, you pay for your research and development, and you even pay to enter the daily, weekly and monthly events.